Hello, everyone. This is Kripa Anand, and welcome to the CanadianSME Small Business Podcast. Today, we are exploring the sweet spot where heritage, health, and environmental advocacy meet. In 2026, consumers are looking for more than just a product. They are looking for brands that protect the ecosystems we all rely on. Joining us today is Angela Ysseldyk, second generation co owner of Dutchman's Gold, a certified nutritional practitioner. For over 45 years, her family has been a part at the forefront of the Canadian honey industry. Today, Angela is leading the charge for pollinator health through the national Let's Plant campaign in partnership with the Sierra Club Canada. She is here today to discuss the intersection of biodiversity and business growth. So, before further ado, let's welcome the special guest. Angela, welcome to the podcast. Such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, Angela, taking over a family brand with over 45 years of heritage, it's a significant responsibility, right? Especially when moving into a leadership role. So I'd love for you to start the conversation with how have you been, balancing, honoring your family legacy while driving your own vision for growth? So how does the intersection work?
It is such a good question. I think really what my parents built was really became our foundation. So not our ceiling, but that foundation. And protecting those values that I grew up with has always been a really important part of growing up in the business. So we took over in 2018, which was 37 years after my parents started it. And so that came with a lot of excitement, but also a sense of responsibility. So, in our case, it was not something that we just inherited. We bought the business from my parents. I'm one of 8 children. So stepping into this role was very intentional and a decision that was a huge commitment for both of us, both personally and professionally. So, when you grow up in a family business, it becomes part of your DNA. It does. It's looking back, I can clearly see the values that my parents built for the company that it was: hard work, resilience, integrity, long-term thinking, and really believing that what you're building is, you have to believe in yourself even when things are difficult, because that is surely to happen. So at the same time, we're really stepping into a business that was run very entrepreneurially. I mean, it was, to be honest, it was run like a farm, and which is great in so many ways. I mean, my dad would do the beekeeping at night, and then he'd, pack the honey and go deliver it, right? And you can only do that for so long, and you can only grow so big when you're doing everything. So
Right.
I think that was a big part of it. So there was limited systems and technology behind it. We didn't have a website or internet or email addresses. So I think a lot of it lived in instinct and relationships and experience. So one of the biggest leadership lessons for us was realizing that I think growth requires structure. So if we wanted to scale nationally, we had to build for the next generation. We needed to build stronger systems, better process, clearer visibility, and more operational discipline behind the scenes. It sounds like, oh, this is great, but it's hard. It takes time. We're still doing it now, right? 7 years or 8 years later. And change is hard. We know that no matter what business you're in. I think especially in a family business, because you don't always realize when you're in it, when you need to change it, it's comfortable and there's a deep history there and ways of doing things, it's like, what's wrong with the way we're doing it, So I think we had to modernize the business without losing that integrity and the values that made it special from the first part. So it's really about that quality, the integrity, the respect for nature, long-term relationships. You talked about it at the beginning, support for Canadian beekeepers and the bees, right? And be willing to evolve, with almost everything around it. So we have our bee-friendly promise that we have, that it really encompasses everything there. And I think too, and sorry, I'll end it here, but I think it's like bringing that complementary skill set. So I didn't go right from 18 to taking over the business. I went and got some experience in the industry working for other wellness CPG companies in sales and marketing. My husband owned a chain of wellness stores. He's an entrepreneur himself. And we really bring kind of a complementary skill set that we could bring back to the business. So it's kind of neat growing up in it, going and learning, and then coming back and applying some of those skills, and even, going and getting a business degree, and, where we can have models and systems that we can actually work with. So yeah, I think just building something more scalable nationally, again, like you asked at the beginning, kind of straddling what we were built on and rooted into, and never forgetting where we came from, those humble beginnings, but also in a sustainable way, and keeping those values while we grow.
I think you've articulated it beautifully because, successfully transitioning a family brand requires, a very delicate balance of respecting the founding traditions, while also modernizing the operations for a global market. And the passion, I can see it in your eyes, in your voice. So kudos to everything that you've achieved so far and so much more power to you because building a
Thank you.
legacy is one thing, right? But continuing the legacy is also equally important.
It
So
is.
that's amazing. Now let's explore how pollinators impact food security and sustainability. So I'd love for you to take this opportunity to educate our listeners, Angela, on why is bee health critical to biodiversity and food security in Canada today.
I think, well, it starts with one sentence. It's really bees support 1 in every 3 bites of food that we eat. I don't think we realize that. Just walking through the grocery aisle, you may not realize, I mean, there's apples, berries, cucumbers, pumpkins, almonds, avocados, even cocoa and coffee are because of pollinators, right? The list goes on. And so honey is really a byproduct of something much larger, which is really the pollination. And so I think we think, oh, bees make honey, but maybe they don't really understand that link towards the food
Right.
system. And so the challenge is that pollinators are under significant pressure right now. Habitat loss, climate variability, pesticides like neonicotinoids, loss of floral diversity, there's varroa mites that are all impacting bee health. So bee health, even 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, there's always been risk, but it's gotten worse over the years, right? You think about all the things that have shifted in terms of that. So there's also this economic reality that people don't always see. Honey is one of the most adulterated foods in the world. It is. So there's olive oil, there's honey, there's spices, there's even nutritional supplements. It's rampant adulteration, which is shocking to me. I didn't grow up in that, didn't even know that that was a thing, but it is. And so 1 in every 5 jars of honey on the shelf could be adulterated. Now, the good thing is that Canadian honey is coming back on top. And so it doesn't come back as being adulterated, but it is quite easy to get away with it. And so not all honey is for sure, but when we're getting into adulteration, it's usually the offshore honey that can be the issue. And so that's why it's putting pressure on Canadian beekeepers because offshore honey or adulterated honey costs less. And so it's hard to keep up with, real honey, real Canadian honey. And then, you're getting offshore honey coming in. So this is where you talk about kind of economics and, that piece. So it's like bees are important for the food that we eat, but we also want to look after, the beekeepers in our own countries, in our own area to make sure that we're getting or even in the world actually, because avocados and we need to look after pollinators, not just locally, but
Right.
throughout the whole world. And so I think it's important, yeah, when consumers are choosing and just really knowing
Mhm.
that link and knowing what the brand stands behind and making sure that what you are picking is authentic and you are
Right.
supporting the beekeepers behind it.
No, that was
So
very informational, I was saying. Yeah, go ahead.
I hope that helped. I hope that helped. I think it's just one of those things. It's all connected, just like the bees are connected. It's also connected to the food supply. So it's just a really important piece that I get a little soapbox on that, and a little I get a little passionate, but it is really important because I just see how hard beekeepers work. My dad is just growing up with him, and we are now working with other beekeepers in Canada, and
Mhm.
it is important. So anyway, I hope that helps.
Of course, again, I'm so happy about your, passion that you come with. But, the main issue that I think is the awareness around this, right? Because this information that everything that you're talking about, it needs to get to the people in a right way, right? So let's now touch upon turning awareness into action through national campaigns. So again, I'd
Yeah.
love for you to take this opportunity and tell our listeners about what is the goal of the Let's Plant campaign and its impact on pollinator habitats?
Yeah, so we know how important pollinators are. We just talked about that. They're at risk of becoming extinct. There's, lots of risk around that. So Let's Plant is about rebuilding the ecosystems that support our pollinators and our food supply. So I mentioned, floral diversity is one, and monocropping, right? When bees don't have a large food supply, it's a problem. So the idea behind Let's Plant is really simple. Small actions multiplied across communities create meaningful impact. So this year, our goal is to help plant over 10 million wildflower pollinator friendly seeds across Canada in partnership with Sierra Club Canada Foundation through hundreds of volunteers, ambassadors, schools, garden centers, retailers, community partners. They're helping to really distribute regionally appropriate seed mixes that support biodiversity and pollinators throughout the growing season. So one thing that we're very intentional about is planting native species and bloom cycles that support pollinators in the early spring. So think about March, right? When it is looking a little nicer out. We're in May now, or whenever this gets, posted, but bees need food throughout the whole year, even in the fall, in the late season. So being able to match those bloom cycles. And what I love about this campaign is that it makes sustainability tangible. People want to help, but they don't know what to do. So, planting something that's pollinator friendly is a simple action that can help reconnect people to the ecosystem and that our food depends on. And it's really about that bigger goal, right? So helping people understand that small actions, when multiplied across communities, can create a real environmental impact. So it starts with a seed, right? Just a small thought, intention, right? You said awareness, and it really just grows from there, but it really does
Right.
scale with people and sharing the information.
Definitely. Again, very well articulated. And, on this note, building on what you've said, Angela, I'd like to give a special message to all of our listeners, specifically to all the entrepreneurs and families out there watching. In 2026, the most successful brands are those that give back to the planet. Dutchman's Gold isn't just selling honey, they are leading a national movement to protect the pollinators that sustain our food system. Through their bee friendly promise, they are proving that a business can be both profitable and planet positive. If you want to support a brand that has been a Canadian staple for 45 years and is actively planting the seeds for our future, look for Dutchman's Gold at your local grocery store. Visit dutchmansgold.com to learn how you can join the Let's Plant campaign. Let's protect our pollinators together. Coming back to you, Angela, engaging the community to plant millions of seeds creates a tangible positive impact that goes far beyond traditional corporate social responsibility or the CSR talks that happen. This is practical work that is happening. uh Moving ahead, let's now explore why purpose driven business matters so much, specifically in today's time. So, from your perspective, why is it important for modern businesses to stand for a cause, and how has it supported, growth in general?
I love this question. I think when you have something that goes beyond product, you've got a purpose. First of all, it moves the entire organization, the team. Everyone feels like they're rallying for something greater than themselves. So it's a great way to build that community and sort of build everyone towards a common cause and that sense of purpose, which we all want. And at the same time, consumers today are incredibly informed, right? They're asking harder questions about sourcing, transparency, sustainability,
Mhm.
integrity, especially in food. And so I think I was mentioning adulteration. People may not realize that. So, I mean, trust now more than ever, it matters. And for us, purpose isn't something layered into the business. It's really that marketing campaign. It's embedded into, or just a marketing campaign. It's embedded into how we operate and why the company exists in the first place.
Mhm.
So our advocacy for pollinators, Canadian honey, biodiversity, and education aligns naturally with who we are as a brand and a family business. So it's truly authentic. And
Mhm.
I actually think consumers could tell the difference when purpose is authentic or if it's performative. It builds trust, strengthens relationships with retailers and partners, and really creates that long-term loyalty. So it's not really separate; it's part of our strategy, but it's there innately. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's authentically there, and it's what gets me up every single day.
I think that's beautiful because, when a brand stands for something meaningful, it builds a level of customer loyalty and, retail shelf presence, of course, that, a generic product simply cannot achieve. Um, on that, I'd love to do a little time travel with you now, Angela. Imagine if I were to give you a time machine and we were to go, 5 or 10 years into the future. Uh, how exactly do you envision the future of this business? What do you see when you step
You
out
know
of the
what?
machine?
Yeah, like time capsule, 5 to 10 years. I mean, it's hard to say, but we want to be a national brand, a household brand across Canada. we want to be known for being the voice behind the bees and advocating for them, right, as a leadership, inspiring other retailers to do the same, right? I think there are gatekeepers, and it's not just about what we're doing, but retailers have a role and a responsibility, just like even government has a role in sort of this whole piece about protecting our pollinators, so beyond our business, beyond being a household brand, we really want to see, a lot of action being done around um, creating some standards for like just authentic honey, protecting
Mhm.
pollinators, and looking at that in a bigger picture. I think there's something there for that. And, we're second generation, so we're always thinking about what can we do for the next generation to make it better. And that's kind of what the ethos is for us. It's not just about today, but it's about what's the long-term impact of what we're doing. And we don't really go for the big win, like the small win. It's like the short-term win, I should say. It's like long-term growth.
Beautiful. I think you've painted
Yeah.
quite a picture there, and amen to everything that you've said. On that note, I'm sure a lot of our listeners right now are also families, right? So,
Yeah.
what advice do you have for families running a business together while also scaling?
Yeah, this is a good one because you don't want to be talking business at Christmas dinner, and sometimes because you can tell I'm very passionate, and so it can sometimes roll over into the personal time. And I grew up with more of that work-life integration, so it's just a lifestyle, it's a way of living, and it's not always black and white, but working with a family can be incredibly rewarding, right? But it also does require intentional communication, trust, and a lot of respect. And I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that there's different leadership styles, and it can become a competitive advantage. So knowing when, for example, I work with my husband, so there's times when, let him lead, right? And in certain things, and other times he lets me go. And we definitely think differently, we lead differently, we approach challenges differently, but that diversity of perspective makes us stronger. So, holding space for everyone and those perspectives. And along with that, it's communication. Communication is really key, especially as if there's transitions happening and making sure that that's done. I think sometimes you can struggle a little bit as a family business when roles are emotional instead of getting clearly defined, just because of that crossover into personal, your world, your life, your family, your kids, your husband, your parents. And so you do really want to kind of separate that without losing the passion. So yeah, as you scale, clarity becomes more important, critical, actually, clear roles, clear communication, clear expectations. And at the same time, you've got to protect the leadership and the relationship behind the scenes, just because at the end of the day, family does come first. So, for example, Mark and I, we use our phones for text messaging for personal, and then we use Teams for like business communication. You know what I
So
mean?
two
So
separate conversations and two separate
yeah,
vibes
exactly.
going on as well. So
Yeah.
even if you've, fought that day, you can still have the other conversation going.
Exactly. It's like, can you pick the kids up over here and then over here? Yeah, exactly.
That's
So yeah.
amazing. Yeah. Exactly, you don't understand where do you draw that line, right? But that's a great advice. I think maintaining clear roles and a shared passion for the brand's overall mission is the secret sauce to making a family business thrive across multiple decades. I'm loving this conversation, Angela, and definitely I'd love for you to be back, hopefully for an in-person episode that we do with you the next. But for now, before we let you go, if there's one simple way people can start supporting their local ecosystem, if there's any advice, one thing you could whisper into their ears, what would you say and why?
I think just start small. I think it starts with awareness, like you said at the beginning, and educating yourself and your family. Just even going on your nature walk, start to notice the trees and the bees and the flowers, and talk to your children about it, or talk to the person you're walking with about it, and start making that connection. Talk about it at dinner. Talk about the food, that appreciation for the bees that pollinate it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, action wise, you can simply just go to your local greenhouse and look for pollinator friendly plants if you want. If you've just got a planter, a small area in your balcony, even choose native if possible, avoid pesticides. But I think when it comes to honey, just look for Canadian. Choose Canadian when you can, because you're supporting real beekeepers, helping support pollination and biodiversity across the country. So small action multiplied across communities creates a real impact. So there's things we can do that are easy. It doesn't have to be big.
That is indeed a great reminder that small local actions can lead to massive national change. Angela, thank you so much for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that was Angela Ysseldyk from Dutchman's Gold, a masterclass in family business legacy, pollinator advocacy, and why your business is, the key to scaling in 2026. Now, to all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast, and be sure to subscribe and visit canadiansme.ca for more resources. And to learn more about how we are supporting the ecosystem, please visit the Canadian SME Small Business Foundation at smbfoundation.ca. And lastly, a special thank you to our partners, UPS and ADP, our HR partner, for their ongoing commitment to empowering SMBs across Canada. I'll see you all in the next episode. Kripa Anand signing off.